You've heard the name, you've seen the photos, but how much do you really know about Melania Trump? Well, on today's Celebrity Juice video, we're diving into the untold story of Melania Trump. Behind the designer heels and silent smiles lies a story most people have never been told. A life that began in a quiet, smoke-stained corner of Eastern Europe and spiraled into the white-hot chaos of American power. She's been labeled everything from a gold digger to a ghost. But what if the truth is far more complicated? This isn't just the tale of a model-turned-first lady. It's a life shaped by communism, rebranded by fashion, and thrown into the eye of a political hurricane. Some say she was trapped. Others say she knew exactly what she was doing. But before the scandals, before the speeches, and way before the jacket that made headlines around the world, she was just Melania Knavs, a girl with nothing but ambition and a plan to escape a place that never felt like home. And that's where this story really begins. Long before Melania Trump ever set foot in Manhattan, she was Melania Knavs, a quiet, observant child growing up in the industrial haze of Sevnica, a small Slovenian town tucked inside communist Yugoslavia. Her world was filled with gray concrete, factory smoke, and the grinding rhythm of survival. But Melania, she was watching, learning, dreaming. From the beginning, it was clear she wasn't meant to stay. Her father, Victor, worked as a car salesman, but not just any car salesman. He was a loyal member of the League of Communists, a man with connections and a reputation for charm. Her mother, Amalia, worked long hours as a pattern maker in a textile factory, crafting designs that would unknowingly spark Melania's first obsession: fashion. Even as a child, Melania had that distant look, the kind that says, "I'm already somewhere else." Friends recalled how she'd talk about escaping Sevnica like it was a prison. She didn't just want to travel, she wanted to become someone powerful, admired, and untouchable. And by her early teens, she was already designing and sewing her own clothes, using leftover fabric from her mother's factory shifts. These weren't just outfits, they were her armor, her blueprint for reinvention. But her escape wouldn't come from a passport, it would come from a camera lens. Because at just 16 years old, a chance meeting with a photographer in Ljubljana would set her life on a path no one in Sevnica could have predicted. But her climb wasn't just about ambition, it was about survival. And what she did next would set the tone for the rest of her life. The moment she left Sevnica, Melania wasn't just chasing a dream. She was shedding a past. After that fateful encounter with the photographer, her world shifted. She moved to Ljubljana, Slovenia's capital, to study at a design and photography school, commuting for hours by train each day. It was cold, it was exhausting, and it was far from glamorous. But she didn't care. Every mile brought her closer to freedom. By her late teens, Melania was already being noticed in the European fashion scene. Milan, Paris, photo shoots, runway shows. But there was one thing holding her back: her name. Melania Knavs didn't exactly scream high fashion, so she made a calculated move. She rebranded herself as Melania Knaus. Sleek, marketable, international. It was the first public reinvention of many to come. But don't mistake her for just another pretty face on a billboard. Melania was quiet, but never passive. She studied the industry, she played the long game. While other models partied and faded, she hustled. Always measured, always poised. She wasn't just building a career, she was constructing a persona, one that could open doors or survive being locked inside them. Still, there was one thing Europe couldn't give her: control. Real control. And so, in 1996, with nothing but a suitcase and a visa, she made the biggest gamble of her life. She boarded a plane to New York City. But when she arrived, she didn't just face a new city. She faced an industry that was ready to chew her up and spit her out. When Melania landed in New York City in 1996, she wasn't stepping into a glamorous movie montage. She was entering a war zone, the brutal, saturated battlefield of American modeling, where names were made overnight and forgotten just as fast. At 26, Melania was already considered too old by industry standards. a washed-up rookie in the eyes of agents chasing 17-year-old faces. But she wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to win. She moved into a shared apartment with a fashion photographer, not in some luxury high-rise, but in the cramped corners where ambition and rent anxiety live side by side. While others drowned in nightlife and champagne, Melania cut herself off from distractions. No scandals, no parties, no headlines, just focus, hustle, silence. And it worked. Her first major break came in the form of a giant Camel cigarettes billboard in Times Square, a larger-than-life image of Melania that towered above the city like a silent declaration. I'm here. It wasn't couture, it wasn't Vogue, but it was visibility. And that meant power. By the late 1990s, she was rubbing shoulders with New York's elite, socialites, entrepreneurs, celebrities. The girl from Sevnica had made it into the rooms that once existed only in her daydreams. But still, something or someone was missing. Because it was during this surreal rise, at a party thrown during Fashion Week, that she'd crossed paths with a man who would change everything. A billionaire, twice divorced, 24 years her senior, and married. And what happened next would be the beginning of the most watched and most questioned relationship in modern American history. It was 1998, New York Fashion Week, a glitzy party at the Kit Kat Club where egos were just as loud as the music. That night, amidst the champagne toasts and flashing cameras, Melania Trump met Donald J. Trump, billionaire real estate mogul, tabloid magnate, and, at the time, a married man. He was exactly what people expected. Loud, boastful, used to getting what he wanted. But what he didn't expect was Melania. When he asked for her number, she refused. Flat out. Cool, composed, unmoved by the Trump charm. Instead, she told him he could give her his number, if he was serious. That one move, it stunned him. It hooked him. She didn't chase, didn't flatter, didn't fall into line. And in Donald's world of yes men and arm candy, Melania's indifference made her a prize. Their relationship sparked instantly, and not without controversy. Trump was still legally married when they met, and the gossip columns pounced, but Melania stayed silent. She didn't defend, didn't explain. That silence would become her trademark. As the months went on, she entered his world, the world of penthouses, private jets, and paparazzi. But unlike many who'd come before her, Melania didn't let it define her. She continued working, modeling, carefully managing her image. To the outside world, she was his elegant companion. But to those close to her, she was still calculating, still cautious, still watching. Because Melania wasn't just marrying into power, she was studying it. And long before anyone saw her standing beside a presidential candidate, she was already learning how to disappear in plain sight. But while the cameras focused on the glamour, no one saw what was really brewing behind closed doors. And when they finally tied the knot, it was only the beginning of a far more complicated role. By the early 2000s, Melania had become a familiar face on red carpets, at galas, and in tabloid spreads. Always composed, always quiet, always just out of reach. In 2004, Donald proposed on her birthday with a 15-carat diamond that seemed to scream louder than either of them ever did in public. They married in 2005 in a lavish Palm Beach ceremony that looked like a royal affair. A custom Dior gown, celebrity guests, champagne that flowed like a river. To the cameras, it was perfection. But the silence between the flashes told a different story. A year later, Melania gave birth to their son, Baron. Motherhood shifted her focus and her priorities. She stepped back from the spotlight, surrounded herself with nannies, and devoted her time to raising her child on her terms. But even then, she kept her distance. Reports suggested she maintained a separate bedroom and even a separate apartment for years. Independence wasn't just a preference, it was her boundary. And then came 2015. Donald Trump announced his run for president. The press swarmed, the scandals piled up, and Melania, now poised to become First Lady, was dragged into the chaos. At the 2016 Republican National Convention, she gave a speech that stunned the public. Not because of what she said, but because she was accused of copying it. Entire phrases lifted straight from Michelle Obama's 2008 address. The internet exploded. Plagiarism, coincidence, sabotage. Melania didn't offer much of an explanation. She smiled, she waved, she moved on. That would become her strategy. Disappear into the storm. When Trump officially took office in January 2017, something strange happened. Melania didn't move into the White House. She stayed in New York for months, allegedly to let Barron finish the school year. But speculation ran wild. Was their marriage on the rocks? Was she resisting her new role? No one knew, and she wasn't telling. But eventually, she arrived. And when she did, she came with a message: be best. Her campaign, focused on cyberbullying, children's wellness, and opioid abuse, was meant to soften her image. But critics pounced. How could she preach about kindness while her husband unleashed insult after insult on Twitter? Still, she never lashed out. She never explained. Melania Trump didn't fight the narrative. She buried it. She retreated into the shadows of the East Wing, avoiding interviews, dodging press conferences, and keeping the world guessing. But then came the jacket, and the moment that would define her First Lady legacy forever. In June 2018, during a visit to a migrant detention center in Texas, Melania stepped off a plane wearing a simple olive green jacket. But it wasn't the jacket style that made headlines. It was what was written across the back in bold white letters. "I really don't care, do you?" Within hours, the photo went viral. Was it a message, a political statement, a jab at the media? The administration scrambled to control the fallout. Melania claimed the message was aimed at journalists, not at the children she was visiting, but the damage was already done. The woman who had stayed silent through everything had finally said something, and the world didn't like what it heard. The "I don't care" jacket became a symbol of detachment, of confusion, of contradiction. It was either an act of rebellion or a catastrophic misstep, but what made it so haunting was that we still don't know which. And that was just the beginning. Behind the White House gates, rumors exploded, reports swirled of infidelity. Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, alleged payoffs, silent agreements, sealed documents. But once again, Melania stayed silent. No press conference, no teary-eyed interview, just an icy smile and carefully chosen distance. Insiders whispered about their strange living arrangement, separate bedrooms, rare appearances together, the stiff body language at public events. Was it just Melania being private? Or was she hiding in plain sight? Then came the leaked audio. In secret recordings released by former friend and aide Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, Melania could be heard venting, unfiltered, frustrated about the pressures of First Lady duties, mocking Christmas decor controversies, saying outright, "Who gives a fuss about Christmas stuff?" To her critics, it was confirmation. To her defenders, it was proof she was human. But to everyone else, it was yet another twist in the enigma that was Melania Trump. And through it all, she never tried to correct the narrative. She never chased public sympathy. She simply disappeared into the background noise. But the real mystery wasn't how Melania responded to scandal. It was how she used her silence like a weapon, and what that silence might still be hiding. When Donald Trump left the White House in January 2021, the cameras zoomed in, but Melania had already begun fading out. No grand farewell speech, no legacy tour, just a wave, a boarding staircase, and silence. She and Donald retreated to Mar-a-Lago, their opulent Florida estate. But while he stayed in the headlines, consumed by political battles and legal chaos, Melania disappeared behind golden gates and ivy-covered walls. For her, Mar-a-Lago wasn't just a home, it was an escape hatch. Those close to her say she focused entirely on one thing: Barron. Shielding him from media frenzy, protecting what little normalcy he had left. Melania, once seen by staff as cold or distant, became known for something else: the protector. She kept a tight circle, trusted few, spoke even less. But tragedy wasn't far. In 2024, her mother, Amalia, passed away. a quiet woman who had shaped Melania's early life and style, and perhaps the only person who truly understood where she came from. Her death marked a somber chapter. Melania released a rare, heartfelt statement, short, elegant, and painfully private. It reminded the world that behind the layers of mystery, there was still a daughter grieving. And yet, the public kept asking, where is she? What does she think about Donald's endless indictments, the campaign rallies, the criminal cases? But no matter the headlines, Melania didn't flinch. She didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't explain. Occasionally, she appears by his side, stone-faced, flawless, unreadable, but sources insist she's uninvolved in his political machine. Some say she's bargaining for a future far away from Washington. Others believe she's already secured it. So who is Melania Trump now? Is she the tragic figure caught in a life she never truly chose? Or is she the master of silence, quietly shaping her future while the world talks itself in circles? One thing's clear, she didn't vanish because she was forgotten. She vanished because that's where her power lives. And while the world thinks her story is over, Melania Trump may have only just begun writing her final act. Melania Trump has been called many things: a mystery, a mannequin, a prisoner, a puppet, but maybe the truth is something far more unsettling and far more strategic. From the smoke-stained streets of Slovenia to the silent corridors of the White House, her journey has been a masterclass in restraint, image control, and invisible influence. While others chased headlines, she mastered the art of disappearing. And that silence, it wasn't weakness, it was protection. It was power. So, the question remains, was Melania Trump merely surviving the chaos around her, or was she quietly steering through it, one measured move at a time? Because in a world that demands women explain, justify, and perform, Melania simply watched. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made her the most dangerous first lady of them all. What do you think? Was she a silent victim, or the quiet architect of her own empire? Let us know in the comments. And if this story surprised you, hit that subscribe button for more stories the mainstream never dares to tell.